second by Craig to approve the agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment. Would anybody like to address the council at this time? Under committee reports, we'll hear from Finance and Personnel Committee Chair Dick Lubensmeyer.
Looking for it.
They're in there.
I don't have them either.
Okay.
Inadvertently got omitted, so we'll have to
Just
get
go
read
from
with the
memory.
next one. Sure.
So what's the appropriate?
Well, we met and we talked about budget considerations.
Yeah,
This is,
so fairly brief,
schedule.
I guess.
Talk about the schedule that we talked about.
The new schedule, the upcoming budget sessions, with the change that we have now in format of in evenings as far as workshop format and council meeting workshop format on Monday nights prior to the Thursday night council meetings, which would be the second and fourth council meetings. It was suggested that we incorporate the budget workshops into those same time periods. So we will be meeting with the first budget workshop the 7th of January, and we'll start a little earlier. Normally we'll start those workshops at 6. This will start at 5 because that first evening is generally a little more lengthy. And then we'll continue with our workshop talks after the council meeting on Thursday, the following Thursday, and then the 2 weeks later we'll have the final 2 sessions of our budget workshop talks.
Okay.
And I think that was about that was really the center of the discussion.
Okay. Thank you. City Services Chair Jim Davis.
There was no city services meeting this month due to lack of business, and that would have been, I believe, the last meeting because of the change in format of the committee structure. So.
Thank you. And Public Assets Chair Steve Harms is absent, so I'll just fill everybody in. Public Assets is scheduled to meet on Tuesday, December 18th at 5:30 p.m. here in City Council chambers. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have new business, consideration of approval of new alcohol licensing application submitted for Rustic Brew located at 117 First Street Northwest in Hampton. And I believe we've got the new owners here. If you guys want to address the council at all, or field questions, or?
If you have any questions, I guess we can answer them, but.
Okay. I think Ron was telling me that your license that you're applying for tonight is pending fire inspection from both the fire marshal and fire chief. Is that what we're?
To my just the fire chief, is to my knowledge, is
okay.
what we were waiting for.
Okay.
The
And
fire
I was-
chief indicated that I don't know.
Yeah, the fire chief indicated that he was waiting to see what the state fire marshal's report consisted of, and then he would make his determination following that report, following seeing that report.
Okay. That's my mistake.
Oh.
I misunderstood a couple of conversations and everything, and I thought the fire marshal was coming. He is not. It is only up to the fire chief to write off. And is that, you know, I'm the one that brought that story together, and I was mistaken.
Okay. So yeah, if the council approves this, it will be pending the approval by the inspection by the fire chief.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any other questions, Dick?
Joel and Brad, you're the sole owners of the business?
Along with our wives, yes.
Okay.
They said they have 26%.
Right.
That's a wise move.
Anything else? Okay. And at this time, I'd take a motion then to approve the alcohol license application.
I would approve the alcohol. I move to approve the alcohol license pending the, however you want to word that, inspection by the fire chief.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion by Jim and a second by Dick to approve the alcohol licensing application submitted for Rustic Brew contingent on satisfactory inspection by Fire Chief Jeff Ferris. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say.
Excuse me, one more discussion
Yes.
here. You know, and I'm the one that approached Jeff, and I'm the one that got his head turned around, so tell him that I was, I had misinformation, and there's nothing to do with the fire marshal, just his approval.
Okay. All right. Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Next is the fiscal year 2012 financial audit report presented by Dennis, CPA with Hogan and Hanson.
Yes.
Is that my skins?
My sins, very good.
Good job,
Alright. First of all, yes, I am Dennis Weiskins. I'm the partner in charge of the Mason City office for Hogan Hanson. And thank you for having us do your audit. We're one of the few people who actually enjoy doing those kind of things. So, but I'll introduce also Rochelle Thompson. Rochelle is a longtime resident of Hampton who was actually in charge on the audit, and she's actually the audit manager for our entire firm, but she wanted this job to save her commute for a while. So, and I only heard good things about it from her, so thank you very much, especially Ron, for your help on that. Anytime, feel free to interrupt me with questions. Anytime, otherwise I'll probably just try to take maybe an hour or two and we'll be through this. I mean, a few minutes and be through this and go from there. First, I want to talk about what an audit actually is. We don't come in and look at every single transaction. What we try to do is we take a risk-based approach and we try to look at the riskiest transactions, and we want to make sure the financial statements are free of material errors, meaning something that if a reader came through in the financial statements, they would say, oh, they would change their mind as far as if they should loan you money or something like that. That's a material error. For example, $100 difference is not material, 100,000 would be. And the real number is somewhere in the middle, and that's more of a judgment call based on that type of thing. But so really what you pay us for, and I always call this as the most expensive paragraph that you're going to get all year, is on page 2. That's our opinion. We're coming here to issue an opinion on the financial statements, and the fourth paragraph down is our opinion on the financial statements. And it says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects, and I could read it all, but basically it says the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. And that's an unqualified opinion. That's the best opinion you can get. You can't come out and say, oh, everything is perfect, because then we would have to look at every single transaction, and that would be very cost prohibitive. But this is the best opinion you can get, an unqualified opinion, so that's what you got. So that's good. Now we'll just take just a few minutes to kind of look through things, because these are very similar to the reports that you get to review your financial situation. But if you ever pick up a governmental audit report, and I know you guys do this for fun, you go out and pick them up and read them, but what I would really recommend doing is reading just the management discussion and analysis. That cuts everything down, all the financial information you need. It's not always written, it's usually written by the city staff, or with at least with the input of the city staff. And it gives you all the information you really need to make your decisions. So if you want to turn to, well, first of all, on the top of page 5, it talks about the basis of accounting. The city of Hampton uses strictly cash basis, meaning cash in, cash out. That's what we report on the financial statements. That's how you budget, that's how we report. So that's just something you should know. For example, so you could actually change the financial statement substantially by, oh, maybe you have $1 million bill due on June 30th and you pay it on July 1st. So that's why we have to disclose that they're cash basis, because they're relatively easy to change. Not that we saw anything like that, we certainly did not. But that's why we disclose it as cash basis, because it's a little easier to kind of shift things from one year to the next. Take a look as far as the financial results on page 6. This is a combination of all the governmental activities. That means not your sewer, water, landfill, but your general fund, your road use fund, your local option sales tax, or all the governmental funds together, capital projects. And you can see that your total revenue decreased from $6.4 million last year to $4.2 million. That's, I'm sorry, in the middle of page 6. And but the biggest decrease, of course, was the loan proceeds. Last year you had $2.4 million of bond and note proceeds. This year $600,000. Basically the entire difference. And if you take a look at your disbursements, they went last year, they were $8.7 million, and this year 4.1 million. But again, they were because of the capital projects, the Highway 65 project, and some other things that you spent in 2011 that you did not spend as much money on in 2012. The cash basis, then at the end of the year, so you actually had an increase in cash of $105,000, and your cash basis net assets were $2.4 million. That is quite healthy for a city of your size. When I do these presentations, and I probably do about 25 of them a year, looking at Iowa government, it's nice to see about 1 quarter or 90 days of cash on hand at the end of the year, because if you think about your property tax calendar, your first big payment's coming in September and then October. Well, you folks have about 216 days, so over half of a year, almost basically 7 months worth of cash receipts inside your general fund. I'm sorry, inside your governmental funds. So now some of that's restricted for certain purposes, but overall that's a really healthy place to be. If you take a look over on page 7, you have the same type of report for the business type activities, which is your water, sewer, solid waste, and so forth. And you can see the revenues are very constant, $1.2 million each year. Your disbursements were relatively constant. They went down, but you didn't do a transfer out, I believe, to the governmental funds. So you had an increase in net assets of $242,000. Now, also, that leaves net assets at the end of the year, or cash at the end of the year, of $2.4 million. That's actually 2.5 years worth of expenditures, and I understand that you're building some of these up for a capital project. But that's very, very healthy, and it's obvious that you're saving for something. So that's good. If you take a look over on page 9, another big factor as far as determining the health of the city is how close you are to the your debt ceiling. And the debt ceiling, the most general obligation debt and that you could issue is about $8.8 million worth of debt. And your outstanding debt that applies to the debt issue is about $5.7 million. So you have about a $2.4 million gap, or $2.4 million opportunity to borrow should you need it. Now, like I just said, based on your financial statements, unless you're doing some construction projects or something like that, it looks like that you are well covered. And revenue bonds may or may not, depending on how they're written, fall into the legal debt limit. So that's the gist of the financial situation. I'm going to look at one other thing, so we can look at the general fund alone, because that's your discretionary money, and that is on page 11. And your general fund receipts over in the left-hand column were $1.5 million. Your disbursements were just about $1.8 million for a deficit of about $257,000. However, we had transfers in, net of transfers out of about $350,000. So you had a surplus for the year in the general fund of about $97,000. So your general fund, which is a discretionary fund, which is where when people are having issues, that's where when their governments are having financial issues, that's where you tend to see very low cash balance as well. Your cash balance is $902,000, which is over a half a year of expenditures. So that's very healthy. Now, it's somewhat mitigated a little bit because $365,000 is restricted for the pool. Okay, but even so, a balance of $488,000 is certainly reasonable and healthy for a $1.8 million annual budget. So you should be commended for being conservative there. That's all the financial information that I really want to go through. If you have questions on that, I'd be happy to spend more time on it. I just try to make sure that people stay awake. So one of the other things that we do as part of the audit is we test certain things looking for fraud. We have to sit around before we come and do an audit. We're required to, and we actually do. We get about all of our auditors in the Mason City office, we get around the table and we take a look at last year's financial statements. And it's a little bit harder when it's a first year, so we kind of do a little bit more on the fly when we're in the field. But we sit around and try to figure out, if we worked for the city of Hampton, how could we steal money? And we sit around and try to figure out how we would do it, if we could do it, and then we try to design tests to, that would catch those type of things. Sometimes we look for employees that were terminated before and they're still getting a paycheck. Maybe it's going into somebody else's account. We almost always look at expense reimbursements for anybody who has signature authority over the checks. We do those type of things. We look at travel allowances. We look for things that don't meet the public purpose. And we did not find anything that was suspicious or anything like that at all. So just to put your mind at ease a little bit there. We do, when we come in, we also are required to look at your internal controls and say, okay, what things should we recommend to the council? Because you folks are the ones who are legally responsible for these public funds. And so what things should you know about the internal control structure? Now, a lot of the comments that we give are kind of things that we're required to give, and they don't mean a whole lot. So I'm going to go through a few of these. If you have questions, let me know. But again, a lot of this stuff is just, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it's just pretty routine for a city of your size. But if you flip back to page 30, I'll just kind of go through the findings really quick. As auditors, we tend to focus on the negative. And you know, when you see 95% positive and 5% things maybe we should work on, so don't be overly concerned about the amount of time that I spent on this, because we did not find anything as far as any irregularities or anything like that. These are just mainly suggestions or technical violations that we are required to report on. The first comments on page 30 are just things that I would probably report on for every single city of your size. Not adequate segregation of duties, you know, and there's nobody employed by the city who is writing the audit report. Well, those are very standard comments, and nothing I would lose any sleep over. I think the comment that I would really recommend, and this is actually, I believe, been implemented already, is that we noticed that at the end of the month, bank reconciliations were being done, meaning there was somebody getting the bank statements and, you know, showing all the outstanding checks and doing all that, but they weren't necessarily taking that next level of, boom, reconciling that to exactly what was on the general ledger. There weren't any material differences, but that wasn't being done. And that would be one recommendation that I would have, so that if there ever was an irregularity, which I want to emphasize that there wasn't, this would catch it right away. It's the most important control that I would say that could be implemented that isn't already implemented, because it's just a great way to head things off right away. Something happens 1 month and boom, you've got it figured out. So, and again, that's already been, I believe it's already been being implemented, so there shouldn't be any issues with that. A couple other things on comment number 4, and it talks about some of the things that need to be reported in the minutes, and there's a couple that are related with the library and the DARE fund. Those are all city funds, and they should be approved in the minutes, the expenditures and so forth, and should be included on the books on a monthly basis. So that's more of a technicality, but it's something that you should be aware of, and they should be in the minutes, and not a huge thing to worry about. Let's see. Again, that's, if you flip over to page 33, that's kind of similar to comment 12.2F. Again, just trying to be complete and make sure things get in the minutes. The comment G is just how that would go along with, again, back on the reconciling every month, where coding the interest to the proper accounts. Comment H is we're required to make a comment if you have more money in a fund than you spend in a year. We're required to disclose that. So what a terrible thing to have. So that's a required disclosure, not something I worry about. And there's a few other minor things here, but they're just typically procedural. If you read through them and you have questions, I just would ask you guys to give us, myself or Rochelle, a call, and we'll walk you through them. And if you have questions now, I'd be happy to go over them. But overall, your staff treated us very, very well. We didn't find anything that I would be overly concerned about. Actually, I didn't find anything I'd be concerned about as far as what was spent. Just the reconciliation would be a control that I would implement. We certainly, it wasn't because, boy, there's something going on there. Absolutely not the case. So that's what I've got.
Any questions for Mr. Meiskens?
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you very much.
If there's no questions, then I'll take a motion to accept the fiscal year 2012 audit report as presented.
So moved to accept.
And a second.
Second.
Got a motion by Diane and a second by Val to accept the fiscal year 2012 audit report as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we've got Tom Madden with the Aggie Colby Associates, and he's not quite here yet, so we'll come back to Tom. Discussion of citizen requests for changes in parking limitations on 400 to 600 blocks of 11th Avenue Northeast. This was a letter received. I don't think Mark is here. I don't see him. I can just read the letter for the public need to know. It says, "My name is Mark Dreyer, and he and his family recently moved to Hampton in mid-September. He and his wife are both teachers in town and have 3 children. So far, they're enjoying the Bike Path Aquatic Center, revamped City Park, and Hampton Aquatic Center, including the new tennis courts, basketball courts, and play area. They appreciate the fact the city has invested in making Hampton a fun, safe, and healthy city to raise a family. The purpose of the letter is to open a discussion on the parking restrictions on their street. They purchased a home located at 415 11th Avenue Northeast and live on the south side of the street. According to the current parking signs, there's no parking on their side of the street from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. He assumes the restriction stems from the fact that buses from the middle school need the street free of congestion on 11th Avenue Northeast to safely arrive to the middle school during normal school days. He understands buses need the street free of parked cars as they turn on 11th Avenue Northeast. However, he would like the City Council to consider making the parking restriction more specific. In his opinion, the parking restriction needs to be in effect only when school is in session and be more specific. Off-street parking can start at 8 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. and end at 4 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. Middle school buses need only a specific time slot for arrival and departure. The current signs restrict parking on the south side of the street 365 days a year, and he feels this is unnecessary. He feels they should be able to park during the weekends and holidays when school is not in session. He also believes the street can have parking when school buses are not running. In summary, he would like the City Council to consider revising the parking restriction on the south side of 11th Avenue Northeast. The restriction should allow parking on the street up to 8 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. Buses do not arrive at the middle school until about 7:50 a.m. Monday through Friday. In addition, the restriction should allow parking to resume at 4 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Also, the parking restriction should be lifted on all weekends, holidays, and when school is not in session." Mark C. Dreyer. Doug, I think you've had some conversations pertaining to this. Is that right with the chief?
Yeah. Chief did leave a message regarding this, and he'd been down to the bus barn and spoke to the bus drivers. He advised, 7:30 being a good time to put on there if there's going to be a change, and then 4:30 being the next time. There are some early arrivals earlier than the 7:50 that he was aware of. Chief stated. There's also people that show up for breakfast in the morning and different things of that nature. So that's basically kind of what I got back from Chief Schaefer. So entirely, up to the council on how they're seeing things, but we can do whatever you guys deem necessary.
Are there any other streets or parking restrictions around other schools that we would maybe take a look at that same type of recommendation?
I believe it was about a year ago, we did some no parking near Northside School and around that Ball Diamond area, and I believe it was on North Federal. And then we also did some around Southside School on 4th Avenue out in front of the school. Those were purposely done, I believe, for more so not necessarily for traffic as much as it was safety concerns for kids crossing the streets, getting to and from vehicles when mom and dad are picking up. But those are the only two areas that I can remember that we've changed anything recently.
But if we're gonna be changing here, I think, you know, if we have straight no parking, and again, we wouldn't need it like during holidays and weekends and so forth. I mean, I guess this would be the time to take a look at.
This was enacted basically at the onset. The DOT had given us basically kind of a setup how we should design things at the onset when the new middle school was first constructed and utilized. Now that's been utilized. Some things have changed. You know, the bus traffic's changed a little bit. The crossing, we now see what kind of congestion the crossing is offered on 10th Avenue, 12th Avenue, and 11th Avenue, and along the highway there. You know, so there's a number of things, but the buses have a tendency now to utilize 10th Avenue much more than they were utilizing 11th Avenue, which is, I think, originally what was anticipated, you know, when they first started and put the new signage up. So it's only been up, I want to say maybe 5 years now, roughly, you know, as an approximate, but things have changed. So I think you take a look at how things are being utilized now, and if we need to make some changes, we make them, and if there's a thought process that we don't, then, you know, this is the first person that's brought this one up to my attention so far, or, you know, to the city's attention. I'm not aware of any other people that have brought up the 11th Avenue and had issue with it. But it's been brought up, so we need to discuss it and see what your thoughts are.
I paid pretty close attention to that this past week after I got into getting this letter since I live there. The buses are going down 10th Avenue in the mornings. They're not using 11th, but in the afternoons, sometimes they do, when they're leaving the school. There's not a lot of traffic between 7 and 8, and between 4 and 5, there's not a lot of traffic. That's a problem.
Has there been any comments from bus drivers? Do we know about congestion on 10th Avenue, since there's no restriction there?
I haven't talked to Bob, but I've talked to Dick this morning a little bit about conversations he's had. So anytime you do have those buses, speaking from a person, I've had my CDL for years, you need a pretty wide berth at the intersections to get through, and 10th and 11th Avenue aren't near as wide as like 12th Avenue. It's no different. A lot of residential streets we have in town, these streets weren't designed with the thought process in mind that, hey, there was going to be a middle school planted here at some point in time, so we kind of have inherited what we have there. But for safety, it's one of those things where wide street's great, but we didn't inherit that with this, unfortunately.
I think, just to make sure it's clear, I think Mark's letter contradicts itself in the second and the fourth paragraph, because I believe the signs are not Monday through Friday, it's 7 to 5 every day. And in the fourth paragraph, I think that's accurate, it's 365 days a year. Yep. In the second paragraph, it says 7 to 5 Monday through Friday, but it's 7 to 5 every day.
Okay.
And that distinction is not on there. I did make a call to our superintendent, Todd Leto, and his response was similar to what your information that you gathered from the bus superintendent, in that, this use of signage and use of 11th Avenue really was generated because of the Highway 65 project. During the year and a half or 2 years that construction was going on, there was no other way to access the middle school, and that's why 11th Avenue was chosen as the the street to try and eliminate congestion and parking on one side. And since then, what they've discovered now with the project being over is that, and the reason that Todd was feeling that the traffic was happening on 10th is, if you ever travel at 8:15 in the morning, or at 3:45, or 3:15 I should say, you'll find that 11th, the intersection of 11th Avenue and Highway 65 is blocked. So his preference, Todd's preference, as this materializes, would certainly be if we could open the door to no parking on one side of the street on 10th Avenue would be much preferential to the school system. And looking at that, we wouldn't, I guess, concerned about which side, but if we did that, there are telephone poles in place on the south side of the street already. It means we wouldn't have to plant stakes in anybody's yard. All we'd have to do is hang signs up. But he was very concerned about 8 o'clock not being early enough because of breakfasts that are going on. So I think that 7:30 that he mentioned 7 to me, but I think 7:30 would be, he'd be very happy with that. I think we've got a process of gathering public opinion and gathering some data before we do anything. But they're very much in favor of, as a matter of fact, he did say he would request that the buses use 10th at all times if we made that change.
Okay. Any other discussion? Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Okay.
So where do we go from here?
Well, I think my suggestion would be that we move forward with making some type of change. I don't think we can do anything here tonight, but if you guys would consent to moving forward with I guess coming up with a plan, whether we switch that no parking to 10th Avenue. I think that would be the minimal change that would happen. We would just move it from 11th Avenue to 10th Avenue. It doesn't seem like it's doing anybody any good on 11th Avenue. That's not what the buses are using. But we could get something drafted, I would think, or we could have put something up for public input for the next workshop or council meeting. Have Doug put door hangers in the neighborhood and let the public know what we're discussing and change.
Yeah, I would echo Diane's comment. Living in the area and seeing the traffic there, I think some restricted hours on 11th Avenue can still be beneficial, because as all this bus traffic is happening, there are parents bringing kids to school, maybe limiting the restrictions on 11th Avenue in some way, making it maybe school days only, 7:30 to 4:30, and then making 10th Avenue more restrictive might be something that we should consider, because there's a lot of traffic on both streets. When you're coming in on 12th Avenue from the east and you see the cars backed up for 2 blocks, it tends to make you turn and use 11th or 10th.
We've got public assets meeting next Tuesday. We can also have it discussed there as well, for public input there as well.
There's still quite a few kids that walk on that 11th Avenue also. I would be real hesitant to get rid of the one side no parking, because there are quite a bit of kids crossing streets and stuff there.
So do you just want to leave the consent at putting further discussion on the public assets agenda? Maybe try to encourage some more public input.
Maybe even if Doug's contact Todd directly and get some hardcore suggestions from the school system, so we'll work together with the school that way, so that we're prepared at that public assets meeting.
Okay.
Mayor, does that mean we'd like to have the door hangers for the Public Assets Committee meeting or for the workshop? Which is
I would say both. We'll probably have discussion of both.
Okay.
Which workshop?
This on the 7th.
Just squeeze it in
Yep.
before budget
Yep.
comes, okay.
I mean, you can have your discussions with Todd this week and find out what he's looking for, what would work for the school. And then we can encourage discussion next week. And before we take any action, we can hear more input at the workshop in January. Does that sound like a plan to everybody? Sounds good. Okay. All right, I see Tom Madden snuck in. Tom, you wanna?
Sure thing, appreciate it. Do you have a copy of that one?
This is consideration of authorizing a written response to a water tower contractor inquiry.
Alright, what this all stems from, originally was, and I kinda went over this with you folks at the final pay request about a month ago. And just to recap it real quickly, you guys paid for certain activities. You guys paid for certain activities to be done in a certain time frame. We had an instance where some activities you plan on having paid for by the project were done by city employees, which we charged that back to the contractor. And then the time frame which the project was done went beyond what the time frame in the contract document stated. Within those documents, there's also conditions for liquidated damage and how to assess this stuff. So we just basically followed the contract. They responded with this letter that you guys have in front of you. I guess it's dark blue. And I don't want to go through it word for word, but basically they call it line 1 and line 2. And line 1 equates to the back charge of city expenses to them guys. Line 2 is liquidated damages. In line 1, just to hit off, he says they furnished the pressure relief valves. They did, however, they wouldn't install them. So the same reasoning. Then he goes on to say that, well, we can't adjust the city pressure relief devices, so how could you expect us to be responsible for that? Well, the point being, when we talked to him, he says company policy not to install or adjust pressure relief devices, no matter whose they are. So we said, okay, that's fine. We put it in the city. So on the same token, he said that he can't adjust the city's pressure relief valves. The city cannot adjust their pressure relief valves. So the two go hand in hand. You guys renting out your pressure relief valves and you guys supplying the labor, they have to go together, just like he says in his letter, okay? So that's his point there. In my letter that's attached to behind there, just states what I just said. Basically it says that you stated that it's against your company policy, and I basically just get a little further than that. I mean, the project documents are pretty specific. On a certain page in there, they list out what is included as part of the contract. There's a document called the EJCDC, Standard Terms and Conditions, the specs, and the plans. There's no line item in there for company policy. So that's the point I was trying to make here, that he can tell us whatever the company policy is. That's irrelevant at the point at that time, because that's not part of the contract documents. And then my line item 2 basically says the same thing as talked about. Just as they can't adjust our pressure relief devices, we can't adjust theirs, and had to go that route. His line item number 2, liquidated damages. He lists off several items, and some of these we're going to look at in a different light. Letting the contract provide us with additional information for further consideration maybe later on. But the first item was the date that we took the tower offline. These guys mobilized on a weekend, all right? And it's not a working day for the documents. It's not a working day for city staff either. So what we ended up doing is we took the water plant offline Monday morning and basically stopped producing water and started utilizing the water in the tower. Their guys are on site. They want to do the pressure relief valves, get everything hooked up, and we can't let the city's water tower go low without those being in place, because there's no way to back up the pressure for the city then, okay? So he states that the tower wasn't empty. Well, we can't really empty the water tower without them guys installing the pressure relief valves, and to install the pressure relief valves, you have to take the water tower offline. I mean, the two they're not independent of each other, they have to be together. So, in talking with city staff, it's my point of view that based on the time, they mobilized again, I was on a Saturday or Sunday, and the fact they wanted to get going right away, in my mind, the city did what they could to get the water tower down. How many feet were left in there, 20?
20, right at 20.
So it's about a third full, maybe close to a half full. So it's much less than 1 million gallons, but nowhere near empty. But again, the city can't run that empty without those guys installing their pressure relief devices. So I'm not going to argue that point with them. Again, the fact of the matter is that in the specs it says that they need to anticipate some water in the water tower. We don't know. There's no definition of that. And in my mind, the city did what they could to get the water tower where it had to be. The second item he talks about is weather days. And when we develop a contract timeline, we take into account standard climactic conditions for that time of year. And I have no problem whatsoever with any contractor coming out to me saying, from September to October for the city of Hampton, you guys normally get 4 rain days. Here it is from the NOAA website, it says so. We had 6. But that's not my job to tell him that. That's his job to provide the information to us so we can review it for validity and account for it. So my response to that item is that, you know what, if you guys can provide that information that says the amount of rain days you had was in excess of average, the city is going to have no problem understanding that, because I would have no problem understanding that, and we would give you guys a little bit of reprieve on that, whatever the difference is in days. If he says it rains 6 and we normally get 5, then I think 1 day is fair because it's beyond average and it's beyond how we normally figure out timelines. But again, it's not my job to do that work for them. It's their job to present that information to us. So I'm just going to rebuttal back to him, stating that please supply the information, and I'll bring it back to you folks, and we'll make another decision based on that. The other point that he had noted was that they think that the water tower is ready for use, I don't remember what the exact date was, on a Friday. The problem is that the contract documents and the rules of the state and everything like that require 2 clean bacteria samples to come back. They took their last bacteria sample on Friday. Okay, we didn't get the test results back until Monday. The water tower was not put on until Monday. They were thinking that basically it should have been put back online on Friday. So my rebuttal to that is, and faxes don't work sometimes, whatever else. He said, if you can show to us that the lab transmitted the water tower bacteria test information to the city of Hampton or to myself prior to Monday morning, then we would also provide credit for those days because the fax didn't make it through or whatever it was that we didn't get it over the weekend, because nobody got it during the weekend. I got my copy Monday morning. I actually got the city's copy before I got the contractor copy on Monday, because you guys took split samples just to make sure everything was going to be okay. So again, I would leave that burden of proof between him and their lab to show us whether it's a data printout from the fax machine that says that it got transmitted Friday night or Saturday morning, whatever day it happened to be. Then again, I think that, yeah, they should not be punished for that, and we can take that into consideration, but I don't have that information. So my response back to him is, please provide that. We've got no problem with that. The point that I want to try to get across here, and I want to make sure you guys walk away with this too, we're not doing this stuff to punish anybody. What we're doing here is to, you guys bought a vehicle. You expect to get that vehicle in the same condition that you looked at it on the showroom floor, and nothing else different about it, okay? And you paid so many dollars for that. The point is that you didn't get that. And we've talked about this last time. The city expenditures, and electricity alone, we even talked about this in the pay request, it's probably close to $200 a day just running your system continuously while that water tower is offline. Add in everything else we talked about, the wastefulness of the water, the amount of manpower involved with it, our extra time in it, greatly exceeds the, was it $500 a day was the liquidated damages? It exceeds that number. And that was what I tried to get across to him on the pay request, was that we're going to stick with the contract because if the city really looked at their damages, it would exceed this number, guys, okay? So, to be fair, the city needs to get what they paid for, and you need to get paid for the work you do. If you didn't do all the work, then you don't get paid for all the work. If the city paid for the work to get done in 35 days, and didn't get done in 35 days, but the contract has means to deal with that, then we got to follow the contract. It's not that the city's picking on anybody. It's not that we're trying to be unfair to them. I mean, it's none of that stuff. And I hate to say it, it's just business. And I think that's the way we've got to look at it. He gets pretty emotional about this whole thing, and I know, and I can understand it, but when it comes down to the bottom line, their company failed to realize on 4 different occasions the timing of the project. Right? So I think that's a lot of opportunity for them to bring it to our attention and to wait until, let's see how the city reacts standpoint. I'm not a big fan of that either. So, like I said, I don't want you to think that we're punishing anybody, because you're not. You're just basically getting what you paid for and paying for what you got. Unless you guys have any other viewpoint to that or have any specific questions. I realize contract documents, I know you all read every single page in that, but you got to trust me on everything I'm telling you, it's in there. So we've been through this a lot of times, and we all know from the standpoint of engineering that if you give a project a certain time frame, it costs a certain amount of dollars. If you extend that time frame, generally speaking, it costs less. That's all there is to it. So when we provide a time frame, we're paying for that time frame. And to not get it, what the contractor's doing is taking a gamble that the city's not going to enforce this stuff. They made their schedule work out. They made some money, but they took a gamble. So that's my thought on the whole deal. Yes, sir.
Tom, how does the rain days affect what they do on the inside of a
You know,
tower?
trust me, I had the same exact question, and Ron and Doug and I met with the sales rep from McGuire Iron a week ago, last Thursday, and I asked the same question. And what he said was that when it's raining out, the air is saturated with water. Now, as he's telling me this, I'm agreeing with this, partially, because we didn't get all-day rains. Doug was kind enough to print out the information he had on the rain we got. Some was like, you know, a tenth or 500ths. I mean, a little bit of the spits. But they said that when the moisture's in the air like that, when you're sandblasting and the dust that gets created reacts with the moisture in the air settles on the tank walls, and they can't paint during that particular time. But at the same time, we've got to keep in mind that this tower is huge, you guys. It holds 1 million gallons. It's got a hole in the top of it about this big around. So if you think when it's raining out that all that air just all of a sudden changed over and got wet in 10 minutes, it didn't happen, okay? But nonetheless, I'm not a scientist when it comes down to air exchanges in a tank like that. And in my mind, the only reason why I'm not pushing that one so much is that I think you're going to find out that in a 35-day period that time of year, we get more rain days than what we actually had normally. So I wasn't even really worried about it, because the data is going to support that they don't get any credit for it.
But in an interior environment, when we deal with relative humidity with cylinders and painting and stuff like that, there's a certain inherent amount of water that's going to be in there anyway.
Right.
There's a certain amount of moisture that's always going to be present.
Yep.
And you have to account for that.
Right.
So how do they how do they remove it?
They had a lot of fans up there, didn't they, Doug? It's a rhetorical
It's going to be
question.
there.
I know.
Well,
And again,
perhaps it was company policy.
well, and again, like I said, if you looked at that water tower, guys, there's a access hatch that's 24 inches in diameter. So it's not, the whole thing doesn't open up,
It's not
and
like
the air
this.
doesn't go pouring out of there. Okay, it's one access hatch. But again, I wasn't going to push that one too much, just because the data doesn't support that we normally get less days than that. So,
Is this a company you've used before?
yeah, you know, and
Have you had issues with them before?
no. And here's the thing: it's not specific to McGuire Iron. It's specific to any contractor that walks into a project not financially understanding the requirements of the project. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be them. It could be a dirt contractor. It could be anybody. That's the only problem in dealing with a public project, is that unless you guys have an awesome attorney and love to do battle, we always got to take a little bit. All right. Unless there's some extreme reason why we can't, they're on the DOT blacklist, whatever it is. You know, and a lot of times they're the low bidder for a reason. Whether they wanted to keep their guys busy, they missed something, I don't know. And it's unfortunate that you, as a public entity, that's the stage that we have to plan, and there's nothing any of us can do about that. There was, I don't remember the numbers exactly. Let's just say this project came in at about $160,000. The next lowest bidder was, I mean, it wasn't a scary amount higher, but it was, you know, $30-some thousand higher. You know, it wasn't like twice as much. Then we always get concerned. If we have a term, it's called an unreasonable bid or unbalanced bid, that when we get guys that really lowball it, we can advise you guys, and your attorney would back us up, that the bid is unbalanced, which means that they completely miss something. But here we're not talking, you know, yeah, we're talking $30,000, but in the scheme of things, it's probably 15% only. That's not a whole lot when it comes down to, you know, looking at percentages. So, but in my mind, that's probably what happened, is that they came in here pretty financially tight on what the bottom line of this project is going to look like, and using the contract documents, assessing liquidated damages, really takes probably a big chunk out of any kind of profit that might have been part of this project. In my mind. I don't know whether it's true or not, but that's the way I look at it.
So Tom, you're just looking for council consensus to authorize you to go ahead and respond with this, with similar language that you
with the mindset we just had, that, you know, we expect that you guys are going to supply pressure relief devices and maintain them. We're charging you for it. If you guys can provide us the data that backs up the lab results or the rain days, then we'll reconsider that stuff. I'm not going to tell them that it's going to be a go. I'm just going to use the word reconsider. Okay. And then if it comes back, maybe we need to address the. Maybe I need to put it in there. Please explain to us how, and I'll do the math on how many cubic feet 1 million gallons is. It's going to be 400 or 500, no, 30,000 cubic feet, which is a lot of air. I'll have them explain to us how that, during 1 hour rain, can turn over quick enough to cause adverse conditions inside. There's lots of that information as well.
Ask them what the relative humidity was before the rain and afterwards when they gauged it. They would have had to have monitored it.
Yeah, I don't think they had that. That's a good point.
I don't either.
I like the approach that you're taking, that you're going to give them a chance to prove their claims, which is a fair way to do it. So
exactly.
I'd make a motion that we do authorize Tom to give them a written response on this contract.
Okay.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Dick and a second by Jim to authorize Tom's written response. Is there any further discussion?
I appreciate Tom's diligence in looking after us. This is the second time you've done something like this for us.
The thing is
Paying
that
attention to details matters.
it does, and we don't spend your guys' money putting together these big books to just throw them underneath the desk to make sure it doesn't wobble anymore. That's what you guys are paying for. It's really important, and this day and age is worse because there's less money to go around, and we got to be more prudent with the way everybody's money's spent. And you know, if you could have saved another $20,000 by having a 45-day contract down here, then that would have been the case. But we don't know that, and that's why they're here. So.
Thank you.
All right, no problem, guys. I heard we got a letter from the League of Cities. You guys changing council dates?
Yes.
To
Second, fourth, Thursday.
Okay, that sounds like no problem. I'll copy you on the letter, Ron, and then I'm sure we'll have a response back by sometime in January. So I'll be back.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock? Okay. I have no council meetings on Thursday. That's great. You got to run around. It's not. It'll be nice, to tell you the truth. So.
All right. Go for Friday night if you need a social life.
Yeah, we just switch around all the different restaurants, right? All right. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah,
thanks. Have a good evening.
Good job.
We've got a motion on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks. Motion carries. Okay, next on the agenda is approval of the claims as recommended by the Finance Committee. This is in the amount of $198,366.04. Take a motion to approve the claims.
Make a motion that we approve those claims.
Second.
second.
He was there, he was concealed.
A motion by Dick and a second by Val to approve the claims as recommended by the Finance Committee in the amount of $198,366.04. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion, opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Next is consideration of approval and adoption of resolution ordinance 2012-45 pertaining to the wastewater treatment plant project, a resolution authorizing acquisition of temporary and permanent easements from Keefner Farms Incorporated.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is, as the Mayor alluded to, this is related to the wastewater treatment plant project, another easement, permanent temporary crossing of property that's necessary. Authorizing an acquisition of temporary and permanent easements from Keefner Farms Incorporated, whereas the City Council of the City of Hampton, Iowa has heretofore authorized use of powers of eminent domain in a project known as the Wastewater Treatment System Improvement Project. Wherefore the City Council of the City of Hampton, Iowa has heretofore found the project to be in the public interest, has authorized the use of powers of eminent domain, and found there is reasonable expectation that the project will achieve its public purpose, will be completed, will comply with all applicable standards, and obtain all necessary permits. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Hampton, Iowa, Section 1, the prior resolution regarding the authorization of eminent domain and finding there is a reasonable expectation that the project will achieve its public purpose, will be completed, will comply with all applicable standards, and obtain all necessary permits is affirmed. Section 2, the City of Hampton, Iowa has made a good faith effort to acquire the necessary property interest by negotiation and has been able to agree to the following terms for its acquisition through good faith negotiation. Section 3, as part of the project, the City Council hereby determines it is reasonable and necessary to acquire the following necessary property interest located in Franklin County, Iowa. We've got a written legal description for the permanent easement area, and a temporary easement area is also described, which will run over, under, through, across the following described real estate. Each of the easements areas are shown on the attached plat, subject to the terms and conditions stated in the attached easements. Section 4, Keefner Farms Incorporated as grantor in consideration of $12,250.00 and other good and valuable consideration has agreed to grant, sell, and convey to the City of Hampton, Iowa as grantee a permanent easement upon, over, under, through, and across the above described real estate, together with the right of egress and ingress to and from the same real estate, and all the rights, privileges, incident, and necessary to the enjoyment of this easement. Permanent easement area and temporary easement upon, over, under, through, across the above described real estate. Section 7, the City Council hereby accepts the attached easements and directs the City Manager to issue payment in the amount of $12,250.00 to the grantor. Thank you.
If there's no other questions, then I take a motion to approve and adopt resolution 2012-45.
So moved.
A motion by Jim, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Jim and a second by Diane to approve and adopt resolution 2012-45. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the roll call vote. Eckhart?
Aye.
Auguback?
Aye.
Lukensmeyer?
Aye.
Rowley?
Aye.
Davies?
Aye.
And Harms is absent. Motion carries. Thank you. Next is ordinance number 336. This is the third and final reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 151 of the Hampton Municipal Code of 2009 by revising purpose and creating additional definitions and regulations for the safe and educated land stewardship practices and the preservation and planting of trees. For the reading of the rest of the ordinance, this is going to be done.
I won't read this unless there's a specific request to read it.
Okay. Again, this is the third reading. I take a motion. If there's no other questions.
Move to approve.
Motion by Craig, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Craig and a second by Dick to approve and adopt ordinance number 336. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the roll call vote. Auguback?
Aye.
Crowley?
Aye.
Davies?
Aye.
Harms is absent. Eckhart?
Aye.
And Lukensmeyer?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. That includes includes approving the previous minutes as drafted from the Tuesday, November 27th, 2012 regular session meeting and scheduling the next regular session for Thursday, January 10th, 2013 at 6 p.m. in City Council chambers. Take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
To approve. Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Diane, a second by Val to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, thank you. Next, we have staff reports. Police Chief Schaefer is absent this evening. Is there anything we need to pass along from Bob?
I think we talked about it with the signage.
Okay. All right. Then next, Doug Tartt, Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Try to be brief. T&W grinding is tentatively scheduled for this Thursday at the compost site. Weather will dictate how quickly he gets done at his previous place, and they usually try to fit us in, so we got a few hours of grinding out at the compost site ready for him. And
Question on that, Doug.
Yes.
Is that going to just be leaves then, or are we going to include some of the branches? Or are they all burned up, the branches that we have?
No, we've accumulated since then. Staff's taken down part of a tree, and some haulers we haven't stopped any haulers from utilizing the facility at this point in time. I do believe there'll be some more discussion coming up here in the near future again. We did do a controlled burn out there, and with that controlled burn, we had issues. Even though we had wind direction somewhat in our favor, as staff started, the humidity actually brought some of the smoke down in the area. We did receive some complaints again, same people, but we did nonetheless receive complaints, so I believe we need to have some more discussion here in the near future. But he'll utilize some of that. I did talk to him today. I asked him, I said, usually they'll use a little bit of brush to clean out the teeth of the blades after they do the leaves. They'll do the leaves, and a lot of the fines and stuff actually will clog up their machine a little bit, so what they use is they'll use the wood, and some of the wood, that brush that we have available, that actually helps clean out their machine. I am going to get some pricing from him to find out, just for that very purpose, to see what maybe we would get charged to utilize them maybe 3-4 times a year, to do brush and leaves both, and we'll just kind of take looks. That way I can provide you guys with some information as a potential solution for down the road. Like I said, Mason City, I know where they do their wood chipping. The city doesn't have a compost site there. However, landfill in North Iowa has a compost site, but the city has, they do have a wood chip pile where they have a tub grinder come in every so often and do some tub grinding for them. This is a different type grinder used here, but same type thing that still leaves wood chips. Those wood chip piles, though, they do internally combust as well, so they get fires at theirs too. So I don't know if it's a permanent solution by any means, but at least it's something we can take a look at.
Is it possible that we should consider some sorting of this material that goes out